Hello, everybody. Hi. Today is Friday. Wow, November the 18th. Hello, everybody. So great to see you. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Y'all, today is going to be a little bit of a longer live. We're not just doing one block or two blocks. We're doing 3 blocks today. We're doing some piecing today, and we're doing some applique today, raw edge applique. Hello, everybody. Vicki says she's catching up with me. She just finished blocks 4 and 5, I think. Yep, 4 and 5. She is catching up. Way to go, Vicki. Hi, everybody. It's so great to see you. Come on in and get situated. If you're watching on the replay, feel free to skip around. You might already just be able to look at these pieces and piece together the block, and you want to watch the applique. Or you might know how to do the applique and you want to see how I piece the block together. You can watch that and get busy working. Hi, everybody. Lady Fair says, I love your shirt. It is so me. 5 and below, I think. That's where I got it a few months ago. Hello, everybody. Okay, before we get started, creative crew members, we have just finished up a year-long turn-dash swap. It has been so much fun. I want to thank Miss Jeannie for helping me coordinate most of that swap. That was a lot of work. Thank you so much. And we are finishing up getting any missing blocks together and resent out. So be patient as I put together those lists. But it's been so much fun. If you've gotten all your blocks or you're almost have all of your blocks together and you're wondering about a pattern to use to put it together, 12 turn dash blocks. It could be a great throw size quilt if you just joined the 12 blocks and put a little border around it, right? But if you're looking for a little bit more, something maybe with some sashing, and you're in the creative crew, go to the files section. This week I uploaded a free pattern for this turn dash with little diamond and square sashing. So you can find that. It has a couple of templates on the back page for doing the diamond and the square with paper piecing, or I gave you templates if you want to just do it without paper piecing. So no special rulers needed, and you can download that in the files section. It's so great to see you. Kathleen said, I'm attempting my first applique. That is awesome. Good for you. I'm so glad. I hope you love it. So great to see everybody. All right, so today, so that we can keep all of there was quite a few blocks in this quilt, so some weeks we are combining several different segments into one video. That's what we're doing today. Let me switch you over to the cutting mat. Today, we're working on this section right here. So we're going to do some piecing, some patchwork with this block, which I wanted to kind of look like a snowball and a snowflake. And then we're doing these 2 smaller blocks with some candy applique in the middle of those. So that's what we're doing. And then we have some sashing pieces we could do, right? We'll have the sashing in between the 2 candy blocks, and then the sashing in between these 3 blocks, right? The sashing in between this section and Joy to the World, which we did last week. And then once all of this is together with the sashing, we can piece it to the top portion of our quilt right there. Depending on how time goes, we may or may not do the sashing together. I think by now, y'all kind of get the idea, right? We've been doing the sashing together for each one of these segments as we've been finishing up the blocks, right? So depending on time, we may or may not put the sashing together. Let's see how it goes. All right, so thank you, Celeste. All right, so let's take a look at this because I have a little announcement as we get started for today. Okay, now if you got your PDF, which is down in the description box if you want to grab it, if you got your PDF before yesterday, this is what it looked like. And I realized yesterday, because I wanted to do a practice block, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. I realized yesterday that all of these measurements were correct. However, I had put them next to the wrong colored blocks. Okay, so I have corrected that. If you want to download the new PDF, the light blue, the lightest blue fabric that you're using should be on top with these two different sizes. Then there's a medium blue and a dark blue, and depending on your print settings, they might kind of look the same. But I did swap those around. So if you've tried cutting out your pieces and it wasn't looking color-wise like that, that's why. I'm so sorry. Peggy said, I didn't realize retirement could be so busy. That's what I've heard. I've heard you stay busy. But retirement is good. I'm looking forward to it one day. So here's what I did, y'all. I did a practice block, which I'm really glad I did. I wanted to check my quarter inch seam allowance with this practice block. And what I did on this one, look at that. Isn't that snowflake really cute? So if you get the optional SVG, if you have a cutting machine like a Cricut, a Silhouette, a Brother Scan and Cut, and you get the SVG for these 3 blocks, what you get is the snowflake and then the applique pieces down here at the bottom. The SVG does not include all of the piecework for this block because we're cutting that individual with your rotary cutter and your rulers, right? We're doing piecework, patchwork for this. But it has the snowflake and the applique pieces. So I cut the snowflake out of heat transfer vinyl for my practice block, and that's really cute. Today, I'm going to be stitching the snowflake, which is another alternative, right? So, yeah, I was trying to think, which one should we start with? And I think the pieced block is what we're going to start with today because it's going to require a little bit more work than the 2 applique blocks. So let's pull out our pieces for that, which I have all in here. All right, so let's go over the piece count for this block. And we have a little bit of prep work. I want to make sure none of my applique pieces stick to that. We have a little bit of prep work to do right here in this top box, and it looks really small on the screen. There's 2 little asterisks at the bottom, and the measurements with the 1 asterisk, we're going to cut those pieces 1 time on the diagonal. And then the measurement that has 2 asterisks, we are cutting 2 times on the diagonal. We're going to be making some flying geese units. Now, there's probably a million different ways to do flying geese units, so if this is not your favorite way, I'm going to give you the finished measurement for the flying geese units. So if you want to make them another way and get them ready for this block, by all means, feel free to do that. Okay, so what we have here is we have 4 little small 1.5 by 1.5 inch blocks. We're going to be snowballing portions of this block. And these are your mid, like I have 3 different blues, right? I have a dark blue, a medium blue, and a light blue. This is your medium. Then from the medium fabrics, I have 4 2 7/8 by 2 7/8. I have 4 light blue 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. And then I have a light blue 4.5 by 4.5. That's going to be the middle of our block. And then I have 1 dark blue fabric that is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. All right, so we're going to get started with that one. Let me get a sip of this coffee. I've been nursing the 2nd cup of coffee all day. Sheila said I could totally see someone, instead of using the snowflakes, using like fussy cutting the center of this block. That would be fantastic. So this 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. We are cutting 2 times before we get started with anything else. I thought I brought my other ruler over. I guess I didn't. Let's cut this 2 times on the diagonal to get started. So we're going to line up a ruler from corner to corner. Try to get it as exact right on those corners as you can. And we're cutting 1 time. And then, see if I can move that right back to where it was. Then we're cutting the other direction, corner to corner. I have to stand up, y'all. Corner to corner. There we go. That's going to give us 4 triangles, and that's going to be the center of our flying geese units. Like so. And then we're going to take our medium, pardon me, it's so chilly in here today. We're going to take our medium blue squares that are 2 7/8 by 2 7/8, and we're cutting these 1 time on the diagonal. So just so I have better control, I'm only going to cut 2 at a time. I find if I cut the whole stack, they want to sort of jiggle and move, right? I have better control cutting 2 at a time. We're cutting these 1 time, just like that. There we go. So now we have all of the pieces for this block. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our medium blue triangles that we just cut. The triangle has 3 sides. There's 2 shorter sides and the longer side. The longer side we're going to put right up against that dark blue triangle. Like that. And like that. Like that. And like that. Now for this part, we're going to be using an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? And we're going to flip the first set of smaller triangles right over on top of that bigger triangle. And that's the seam we're going to sew. Now when you do that, the way I want you to line it up, because you're going to notice that the smaller triangle is longer than the one underneath of it. We want the extra to be at the tip of that dark triangle. So when we bring this to the sewing machine, we're going to line this up so that it's even across that bottom seam or that bottom raw edge. All right, and that's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to piece together these 4 seams. Hello, everybody. I'm losing my voice today. Yeah, so many ways to make a flying geese unit, right? So many ways. I think the 7/8 measurements is intimidating for a lot of people, but if you take your time and you're just careful about cutting, you can do it. All right, let's go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to set a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to start bringing over these 4 units, right? And again, what we're really paying attention to is that the raw edge at the bottom is lined up. Your extra little tip is going to be at the top of that triangle. And I'm just going to line them up as we go along. Like that. And this is going to go by pretty quick. We're just doing 4 of them. And we're bringing in the second one. Just like to make sure everything stays nice and straight. See how I'm just lining those up just like that? And we have one more left to do for this side. We are going to take these and press this seam before we sew the other side. So I just like to separate them. We're going to grab those up and we're going to turn on this iron. Turn her on, turn her on. And let her start heating up. And I have to just move everything over for a second. I don't want to push anything off of the table today. Let's move this over a little bit. I think that's good. I don't want to lose anything. Let's put that over there. So with these flying geese units, I like to press this seam open on my flying geese units, okay? Now when we move further along in the block, I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and it's totally a quilter's choice, right? Whether to press to the side or to press open. This part of the block I like to press open. So I'm just going to flip it over from the back, open up that seam. I like to take my little fingernail and just kind of pre-open that seam. The main thing we want to make sure that we're not doing is stretching the fabric so that it gets a little wonky, right? We're going to do that to all 4 of these. So what I'll do is just open the seam on the rest of them and then press them all at the same time. I do have one of those little rollers, but I find it's just quick just to use my fingernail. There we go. I'm going to press those seams. And then I personally like to press one more time from the front, and that's just me. I like to make sure it's laying nice and flat. I'm pressing, not pressing, right? We don't want to shift any of these little triangles out of shape. All right, so once that side is done, we can bring them back. We're going to be adding the other side now. Oh, my coffee just turned off. That's okay. I've had my second cup of coffee on the warmer for about 3 hours now. I'm a little scared to drink it, but I have been. All right, and don't forget the long part of the triangle goes towards the middle. Mary Jo said, what is your reason to press open? Whenever I can, I like to press the seams open when it's easy. Like this seam is really easy to press open. And what it does is just prevent some bulkiness in the block, right? The block is going to lay down much flatter. So any parts of the block that easily press open, I do that. And then this block, I found that when I start connecting all the pieces, it's easier for me to press the seams to the side. So you'll see me switch over here in a little bit, but at least my flying geese units will lay a little bit flatter because these seams are pressed open. Again, you could press these to the side if you want to. You could absolutely do that. So now we're flipping over this triangle. And again, we're lining up that bottom edge nice and flush with one another. And the extra tip, again, is going to be at the top. And we're going to do those 4 seams. So let's come back over here. We're just going to line up this fabric right along the bottom. And we're sewing that seam. So we have a total of 4 of these to do. And once we get these pressed, I'm going to give you the measurement for this flying geese unit so that if you want to make it in any other way, you could do that. And this is our last one. All right, trimming them apart. And now we're going to go press these. All right. What I am going to do, did I bring my scissors over today? I did not. What I am going to do is cut these little tips, the little dog ears that are going to stick above the top of this block. I'm just going to cut those off right now. You could also cut those off as well. See that extra one? You're going to have one on the other side too. All right, so let's get these pressed. Open up. When my fingers are cold, they do not want to work. Just like to pre-open them. I find I get a more neater result if I do that. And I've been trying really hard. Like y'all remember when we were going live every day? Was it summer before last? And we were doing all those traditional quilt blocks. Ever since then, I've been like really trying my best to improve my patchwork skills. Because y'all, I'm an applique quilter. My favorite thing is applique. But since then, I've been really trying hard to like improve my patchwork skills, improve the results I get. And while I'm certainly not where I'd like to be, I have gotten so much better. And I find that if I just really slow down and start doing small things like pressing the seams open when I can, that helps. Taking my time a little bit, that helps. And now I'm going to flip those over and press them from the front. So what you should have is a little space from where the top of that dark blue triangle is. There should be a 1/4 inch between the tip of that dark blue triangle and the very edge of this piece. That's going to be our seam allowance. And let me just measure this piece so that if you want to make these in any different kind of way, you could do that. So the width of this flying geese unit finishes at 4.5, and it should be 2.5 inches tall. Yes, 2.5 inches tall and 4.5 inches wide. So if you have another way that you really prefer, by all means, you can do that. I'm going to just take my little snips and snip these little extra dog ears off, because that does actually create a little bit of bulkiness in our block too. I used to leave all that stuff in there. I did. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but my blocks are much flatter now that I don't leave this stuff in there. I also find that I have an easier time quilting my blocks when I press a majority of the seams open and get rid of any extra parts like these dog ears. I used to leave all that stuff in there. Okay, so there's all those extra little bits, and let me just clean this off. So what we have at this point is we have 4 finished flying geese units, and we have one more little thing to do for some prep work before we actually put everything together. Y'all are so nice. Y'all are so nice. 2020, that's when it was. I lose track now. It's already 2022. That's crazy. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to snowball some corners for the 4 corner blocks, right? This kind of gives it like a snowball effect, the whole thing, right? So we're going to take our 2.5 by 2.5 inch light fabrics, and we're going to take these 1.5 by 1.5 inch pieces. And I'm just going to flip these small little squares with the right side facing down. And I'm going to draw myself a line from corner to corner. We're snowballing, which is super simple. Corner to corner, each one of these pieces. If you can do this without drawing the line, that's awesome. I don't really trust myself so much, so I give myself a guide so I can stay straight. And it only just takes a second just to draw that little line on the back. So each one of the 4 little pieces is going to go right side down onto the pretty side, the right side of this unit here. Right in the corner, we're lining up those raw edges. And your line should be going this way, not that way, right? We're going to be sewing from corner to corner on each one of these units. Okay, so I have to draw a line too. I don't trust myself without drawing that line. So let's take a sip of coffee and warm up the fingers for a second. And then we're going to go do these 4 seams. Using a glittery embroidery thread. Ooh, for the snowflake. Yes, that would be gorgeous. All right, let's switch over here. We're going to be bringing all of these. I'm going to lift my needle up, move it in the middle. I like using a stitch length of like 2.2, 2.0. And we are just stitching right from corner to corner, using that line as a guide. I think the main thing with this part is making sure that the raw edges are lined up nice and straight along the left and the bottom, right? And I'm going to just do one right after the other. And this part actually goes by pretty quick too. And what I love about it is the block looks really difficult with small little tiny pieces, but snowballing is relatively pretty easy. And this is our last one. And now we'll just separate these pieces. My nose has been running. It's been chilly out here in the studio. Even though there's heat in here, it's a big space. The thermostat is down the hallway, so I don't know that it ever really accurately judges this room. Do you know what I'm saying? All right, to finish up the snowballing process, we need to trim away the extra bit of triangle and reduce that bulk, right? And you can use a ruler. We're going to leave 1/4 of an inch seam. So I just line the ruler up and give myself that 1/4 inch and remove that little tiny tidbit right there. We're going to do that to all 4 of them. And these seams I like to press open. Again, just reducing a little bit of the bulk where I can. I know that from here on out, I personally like to press my seams to the side. So this just helps a little bit. Just going to open up the 4 seams on these pieces. Again, just being mindful not to really shift the fabric and stretch it. We want to be firm, but not too firm. Right? 24 inches of snow, where was that? Wow. I think if Virginia had 24 inches of snow, we would be shut down for a month. We have shut down for 2 weeks for a lot less snow than that, I would tell you. All right, so there are my 4 pieces. I'm just going to press these seams. We have shut down for a lot less snow than that. And I'm just going to flip it right on over. And you'll now see that we have the middle grade, the middle blue fabric filling up that small triangle in the corners. And that is the pre-work for this block. So now we're going to start piecing all of these individual units together. So we can lay it out. This light blue center 4.5 by 4.5 goes right in the middle. Our flying geese units go one on each side, with the pointy part of the blue triangle facing out. And then our four corners, the snowball goes towards the center. Like that. All right, I'm going to just leave that on the screen for a second. If you're watching on the replay and you're sewing along, pause the screen and lay out your pieces like that. Sally said they got 13 inches yesterday and 6 more called for today. Holy cow! We would be snowed in for sure. It would be catastrophe here in Virginia. Shut down. All right, so we're going to be piecing this together in 3 different segments, right? We're going to flip these over. Like that. And we're sewing these seams here. Now let me show you something, because if you go and you sew this block together, what we want is a finished 8.5 by 8.5 inch block, right? And so yesterday I wanted to try it out because we have lots of seams coming in together, and I wanted to see if I needed to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance or if I needed to use a scant 1/4 inch because I was pressing my seams to the side. And let me just show you something. Let me scoot this over before we start sewing. I know a lot of people struggled with this when we were doing the churn dash blocks, right? They were using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but their blocks were coming up short. And I think, you know, if you're pressing to the side for one thing, and then the thickness of your fabric plays a role, and the thickness of your thread plays a role. But let me show you this practice block that I did. All right, in one direction I used an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I forget which way it was. It was this way. This seam and this seam was pieced with an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I pressed my seams to the side, and my block from here to here measures 8 1/4. So it is 1/4 of an inch too short. And I measured that and I was like, okay, so let me move to a scant 1/4 inch and let me press these seams, this seam and this seam, and let me measure it again. And sure enough, this way is 8.5. So I will be using a scant 1/4 of an inch to piece the rest of the seams from here on out. And if you're ever piecing together a block and it's coming up short, check into using a little less than a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay? All right, so we're back here. We're going to be sewing this seam, and I like to just mark it because I'm going to be flipping this around at the sewing machine, and I don't want to mess anything up. So I made myself little marks, right? Let me adjust my 1/4 inch seam allowance. For my machine, I know it's 5 clicks to the right, but set your scant 1/4 of an inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. All right, we're going to go sew these 3 seams. Yeah, the block goes together pretty quick, right? It looks like a lot of pieces. There's a little bit of prep work, but it actually goes together pretty quick. All right. Just keeping everything nice and straight. And we have one more seam. Now to speed things up, look, I'm going to separate this piece and lay it right down here. I'm going to separate that piece, the middle piece, and lay it right down here. And I'm going to start with the top row, and I'm just going to do a finger press. And we're bringing over the top block that goes to the right. And I'm going to go ahead and attach the third piece in each one of these sections while we're right here. Just get them lined up. So here's our middle section. I'm just doing a finger press so that it lays flat. I'm going to bring in the right side. And here is this bottom row. Little finger press to the side. You can just double check that the snowballs are in the right direction. And now we can go press these 3 rows. Now you might want to press these seams that we just did open if you like. I tend to find I like pressing these seams to the side because at this point I like nesting my seams, which helps give me a little bit of more accurate intersections, right? I have a little bit of an easier time if I press my seams to the side for this part. So let's figure out which way these seams want to go. This middle section, this has no piecework in the middle, right? And your 2 flying geese units just naturally want to gravitate towards that center block. So we're going to start there and just press those seams towards the center. Which means if I want to nest my rows, right, these units, these seams need to go towards the smaller part of these rows, right, towards the outside. So I just help it out just a little bit, get it going. Like that, and press. And at this point, this block only has 2 more seams for it to be finished up. I just find that I have an easier time if I sort of train that seam from the back side before I flip it over and just give it a nice little final press. That's just me. All right, so to finish this up, we are just piecing together these 2 seams, right? So we're going to flip this over and we're going to bring that over to the sewing machine. And what, because I've pressed my seams and the lighting is not going to show it so well, that seam's going that way, that seam's going that way, and it's going to help me sort of just nest this section and this seam together. It's going to sort of just catch right there. Now I must have had a little wonkiness in my flying geese units because I did not square them up when I was done. I just went with the finished flying geese units. So I do have a little bit of wonkiness, but that's going to be in the seam allowance, and it's all going to look nice and straight. Alright, so we have that seam. We can just do a little finger press. There's those pieces, and we're going to just go ahead and bring in this final piece and flip that right on over, and we're going to sew this seam as well. So I like to get it started and then make sure everything else is lined up all the way to the edge. You could certainly glue base these seams if that gives you more control, or throw a couple pins in there if you wanted to. There we go. Let's go press these seams. From the back, let's figure out which way these seams want to go. I'm thinking they kind of want to go towards the edge. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Again, if you want to open up those seams, you could absolutely do that. So these seams will be a little bit bulky. We have several seams coming in at these intersections, and that's one of the main reasons why when I can, when it's easy for me, I press my seams open. Just get that worked over to the side a little bit. I might even use a little burst of steam to help out in some of these intersections. And then we're going to flip it over and give it a good press from the front. So there we go, right? It is way easier than it looks. When you look at this block and you're like, wow, that's a lot of different pieces. But see, wasn't that pretty simple, right? All right, so let me just check to see how big this is, to see if I need to square it up at all. Here's my 8.5-inch ruler. And look at there, y'all. She is perfect. I don't have to square up anything. 8.5. So for pressing those seams to the side like that to finish up this block, the scant 1/4 inch really helps me a lot. So if your block is coming up short, try using a little less than the 1/4 inch. So there we go. So you could leave the block just like this with nothing in the center. Sheila made a really good recommendation, and I'm sure many of you others have said something like this too, about fussy cutting a fabric for the center of this. Wouldn't that be really cute? Now I provided a little snowflake that you could stitch or do something like some heat transfer vinyl in this center. right? Isn't that cute? We're going to stitch this snowflake on today. So let me just show you. I have a little light pad. That's going to help a lot. You might be able to hold this up to a window to trace this little snowflake pattern. But I have one of these LED light pads. Y'all, this thing has been through the ringer and she keeps on ticking. I've had it several years now. I know that when I turn this on, it's going to mess up the exposure to the camera. But I do believe we could put the snowflake pattern on here, and it should be bright enough for at least me to see it here in person, even if it messes up the camera and you can't see it so much. That's how I'm going to transfer the little snowflake design. I'm going to turn it up nice and bright. Oh yeah, I think you can see that. And we're going to figure out where to place this snowflake. I think I wanted to do it like this. There we go. See that? I'm going to take a heat erasing pen and I'm just going to give myself a little snowflake drawing. Just as a guide. My stomach is rumbling. Did you hear that? I hope not. I'm just giving myself a guideline to run some stitches right through here. I have some dark blue thread. It is a polyester thread, but it's not an embroidery thread. And I think I want to do a little baby satin stitch. There we go. So let's turn that off. And you'll see I have a really faint little snowflake right in the middle of this block. It's going to just act as a little guide for my stitching. And before we move on, I want to do my stitching as part of my quilting. You could stitch it now, right? But I want to do my snowflake as part of my quilting for this block. So let's bring in the rest of the pieces for this block. Today's like a sewing marathon. Oh look, that was perfectly cut so that the snowman's right in the middle of that block. Let's go ahead and glue baste some batting on here, right? Y'all remember that I've been cutting my batting a little bit smaller. I've cut my backing fabrics for all 3 blocks today at exactly 8.5 by 8.5 for this block, 4.5 by 4.5 for the rest of the blocks. But my batting, I've cut 1/2 inch smaller. That seems to be working out pretty well. I'm just giving myself a guide so we can center the batting right in the middle of the backing. Glenda said, I love my light box. Me too. Hazel said, I did, Lisa. What did you do? I missed so much of the conversation, y'all. I do like coming back, usually Friday night, and reading what I've missed. Just kind of being generous with that glue. All right. Let's line up this batting right in the middle, like so. And I'm just going to do a little finger press. We're going to put some more glue. Keep in mind that I'm not going to glue because I don't want to lose my snowflake. I just now thought about it. I don't want to lose my snowflake. I'm not going to glue right in the middle because if I press that, I'm going to lose my snowflake. I just thought about that. But I do want to dry that glue, right? We're going to line up the top block with that bottom portion. Let's make sure there's no steam. I don't want to lose my little snowflake I just traced on there. I guess I should have used some kind of permanent marker. That's another option, is you could use a fabric marker for your snowflake. I think that would be cute. But since we went through the work of tracing that snowflake, I don't want to lose it. Oh, you heard my tummy, Hazel. You did. I hope this doesn't lose my little block on the front. I might just have to hand draw a snowflake on there. Oh, it's just there. All right, let's let that cool off. I'm going to reinforce what I can see when it's cooled off. So at this point, we can quilt our block and we can stitch in the snowflake. I think since I'm doing a satin stitch, I'm just going to use a regular pin, y'all, which I probably should have used in the first place. I'm going to be covering up these lines with my stitching. Some of it did fade when I pressed the glue dry on the back. There we go. Now right now I have some light gray thread in there, and I think before we stitch this snowflake, because I want to do a small satin stitch. That's a little bit of a denser stitch, and it's kind of a lot of stitches right in the middle. I think before I do that, I want to go ahead and quilt the rest of this block, whatever kind of quilting I'm going to do, and then stitch the snowflake. What do you think? Karen said, what about doing some couching? Oh, you're speaking my love language. I love couching. I wonder if Christmassy puff paint would work too. Yes. That would be pretty. Sheila said glue and glitter. Yes, like a snowflake. That would be awesome. Or like a stocking. You know how you do the names on the stocking. All right, I think that's cooled off. Before we do the snowflake and before I switch to a darker blue, let's go ahead and do some quilting. So how do we want to quilt this? I don't think I'm going to get elaborate with it, y'all. I think there's a million ways you could quilt this. I think I'm just going to do your standard stitch in the ditch along through all the seams. More like on one side of the seam or the other, but I think that's what I'm going to do. I think you could get really fancy with it, but I'm going to keep it simple. So for that, I like using my open toe foot so you can see a little bit better. Where's that foot? Here we go. The gray thread I've been using should just blend in pretty well. And let's see. My stitch length is 2.4. I'm going to go with it. Now y'all know my machine likes to start off on something, so let's do this. We're going to come back down on the other side. I saw a comment, if you're here, I saw a comment on one of these videos. Someone said they cringe when they see me use my little leader pieces. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why, but it really does help me to start off on something. I just thought that was funny. I'm stitching right off the edge. And I'm going to do this last one. And I think that's all the quilting I'm going to do to my block. Even with those 4 simple quilting lines though, what that's done is it has anchored these layers together so that when we do the stitching of the snowflake, there should be less pulling in, right? We've anchored all of these seams and that should help a lot. All right, let me switch out this top thread. I'm going to leave with the same gray thread in the bobbin. Pull that out. Switch over to I would say this is a navy blue. Kind of really matches that darkest fabric pretty well. Gonna take me just a second. Now the only thing about today is I have lost my little practice quilty that I set my stitch length and everything on. So I'm going to kind of be winging it. Maybe I'll do some practice on one of these leader pieces just to set that. All right, so I know I want to do a little satin stitch. So I'm going to pick the satin stitch. You could do a zigzag stitch. I don't want it really wide. I want it pretty thin. Let me just see here. And it looks like I need to lower my tension just a little bit. All right, so the stitch I'm going to start with, and hopefully I don't have to change it, 1.8 on the width and a 0.4 on the length, and we're going to go with that. Let's see, where do I want to start? I think I want to do the little pokies on each one of the arms of the snowflake first, right? That's going to take us a hot minute. I do think at the beginning and the end of each one of these stitches, I'm going to do a little back stitch just to help lock those stitches in place. See that? And I'm just going to be moving from one to the other. I should probably not use my thread cutter. I just say that because my thread cutter tends to leave a little bit of a mess on the back. The awesome part is there's no two snowflakes that ever look alike. So if each one of these little sections aren't exactly perfect, that's okay. You'll see I'm just jumping one to the next. This is going to take a little bit of time, isn't it? That's okay. I feel like today we're having a sewing marathon anyway. I want to thank all my moderators keeping an eye on the chat while I do this. Thank y'all. I know my thumb sort of gets in the way when I do that back stitch. I'm sorry. I am particularly not ready for Christmas music yet, but you could put on some Christmas music and stitch out the snowflake. I'm not, but you could. That's getting cold. Next week is already Thanksgiving though, y'all. Can you believe it? Which one did I mark with my pen? I want to cover that one. All right, we've got 6 more little tiny spokes to do. Of course, designing this block, I'd be like, oh yeah, it would be so cute with a little snowflake in the middle. Not thinking about how long it's going to take to actually do it during the live. That's been the theme for most of these blocks on this quilt. That's okay. For most of us, this is our time to hang out together anyway. I'm going to have a bunch of little jump stitches to trim off. But you know what? It's going to be worth it. I think I'm going to love this snowflake. And we have no internet. Hold on a second if y'all can hear me. Am I back? I'm showing red on my end, and I'm just going to take a pause for a minute. Off and on, off and on. I'm hoping it just comes back on. Oh, it was green. You can hear me. Oh, there. Oh, we're all green now. Yep, they've been working on our lines, and I don't think they've fixed them yet. Every day I've seen trucks in our neighborhood for like 2.5 weeks. I do think they're running completely new cables, so wouldn't that be lovely? I think we're all green now. I'm going to finish stitching. I don't know how much you missed. I really just stopped because I wanted to make sure that you did indeed come back. That's a lot of little needle punching into that middle fabric. See that? I'm really glad we went ahead and quilted first. Oh no! Okay, we're green. That's annoying. I'm sorry, y'all. If I freeze up, just hold on a second. I'm gonna finish stitching the snowflake. Okay? Oh, that was it. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, new fiber optic cables. That's what I'm hoping. That's what they're putting in the neighborhood. That'll be so lovely. It's annoying, you know, especially considering how much we pay for internet. My glory. All right, so here's my little snowflake. It was definitely worth the time to stitch that out, right? Let's go ahead and just trim all these little jump stitches. I usually wait till the end to trim them all, just so I can get through all the stitching pretty quickly. And she cleans up pretty good. See that? And we've already quilted this block, so that means, excuse me, coffee. That means, that was gross, I'm sorry. That means this block is done. I do have the little jump stitches on the back to clean up. I'll do a really quick, rough cleanup on this one so you could just see what the back is going to look like. That's the beauty of a live, I reckon. I think the only thing better would be to have all of y'all in person. Wouldn't that be awesome? That would be so much fun. All right, so on the back, again, the gray thread's just going to blend in, but you can kind of see the definition. The quilting, stitch in the ditch, that's what it would look like on the back. See that? Just the definition of the stitch line. And there is the front of that block. I think she's lovely, right? And so that's stitched, and that is heat transfer vinyl. Imagine using some sparkly heat transfer vinyl. Wouldn't that be so pretty? All right, so we have that portion done. That only took an hour. An hour. The other two blocks, we're doing some candy applique, right? And my form of applique that I love the most, because it's the quickest, is the raw edge applique. So I've already pre-cut the top portions of my blocks, right? And I have cut these at 4.5 by 4.5, both pieces. And then I also cut the backing of these blocks at 4.5 by 4.5. And my little batting pieces, I cut at 4 inches by 4 inches. So I have all of that ready. And before I create the layers, I'm going to go ahead and fuse all of my applique in place. So you could trace these all as one piece, right? If you wanted to. I did them originally just in case you wanted to do different color little wrapper ends versus the middle part. So it's 3 different sections, but you could trace this all as one piece if you wanted to. You could certainly do that. So let's see, I have them going kind of corner to corner, although I don't think it matters, right? You could do them however you want to. But I am sticking the little frilly part of the wrapper right underneath of that circle. I have to heat her back up. She's been sleeping. We're going to go ahead and fuse these down so they don't move around so much before we actually put the little swirl on the top. And I'm just doing a quick little press just so those will stop moving around so much. And then I'm going to bring in my little tweezers because I think that would be helpful. We've got some red pieces, red candy, and green candy. Now, I cut all of my pieces out with my Scan and Cut. They've already got heat and bond on the back side of them. But the templates are there. If you want to trace and cut them out by hand, you could certainly do that. He didn't fuse down very well. There you go. All right, so I know I want to use my green over here and my red over here. So we can just start playing with these. How do I have them? Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to just sort of put them all on here before I really fuse anything together. I see. There we go, Lisa. That's going to be super cute. I think it's just getting them all situated. Scooch ya over, scooch ya over. There we go. Situated and spaced out. I think that'll be the hardest part of these blocks. How does that look? That looks good. No, it doesn't. It doesn't really help if you're a little OCD like me. Trying to do a live and do things quickly just to move along. Okay, I can live with that. Let's do that. Robin said, do you think if I put Heat and Bond Ultra on fabric to cut my snowflake and iron it onto a block, it would work? All right, let me rethink that. Do you think if I put Heat and Bond Ultra on fabric to cut my snowflake and iron it on the block, it would? Absolutely, Robin. Yes. Yeah, and then you wouldn't have to stitch it down, right? If you use the Ultra Hold, it would be permanent. Let me get these situated here. Yeah, you're just going to be doing lots of little fussy cutting. That's all. That would be super worth it, though. That's going to be really cute. As far as stitching these down, just like with, I say this all the time, you could use a whole bunch of different stitches, y'all. Do not feel like you are stuck only doing what I do. You could do a little tiny zigzag stitch. You could do, does that look good? That looks pretty good. You could do a satin stitch. You could do, it's a little tiny pieces. You could do, I think a couple of the decorative stitches in my machine would work. But I think that would be a lot of work around these little tiny pieces. I always have a hard time with my decorative stitches, figuring out the right place to stop before you turn. Right? I'm just fusing all these pieces really, really well. I, myself, am going to be doing a free motion stitch, which is going to go by super quick and is going to be super cute, right? But you don't have to do that. And like Robin said, you could use the Heat and Bond in the red package, and you would be done at this point, right? With these pieces. So let me bring in the backing fabric. I want to just give myself some reference points. So I'm putting the batting on straight. We're again gonna just be glue basting that in place. There we go. Oh, Karen said these would be cute as cornerstones. They would. They really would be. And a whole entire quilt. Wouldn't that be adorable? All right, let's bring in the batting. Try to keep it nice and straight in there. There we go. And we're going to glue baste these layers. I really like these blocks with the candy in them. Of course, I have a huge sweet tooth anyway. Evelyn said, do you put your heat and bond on your material before you use it in your scan and cut? Yes, I do. Absolutely. Lila said, if you didn't already have a cutting machine and you were to be gifted one of your choice, which one would you choose and why? Well, I'm glad you're asking this in here. And any of you who have a different machine and have different experiences than I do, please feel free to give Lila your opinion about your particular cutting machine or the one you want and why, your reasons why. I am partial to the Brother Scan and Cut because that's what I have. That's all I know. Except for, before I got the Scan and Cut, I had an industrial cutting machine, like the Roland, like the bigger one, right? Besides the industrial cutting machine, the Brother Scan and Cut is all I know. And I know that when I wanted to move to a smaller personal sized cutting machine, the built-in scanner with the Scan and Cut was a game changer for me. Okay, and there's lots of reviews out there, so please just take what I'm saying as just my opinion. The built-in scanner was a game changer for me. And I find that it's very easy to use, and it does a phenomenal job for me. I love it. Now, I've heard people say they love their Cricuts. I've heard people say they love their Silhouettes. So my advice is if you are wanting to be gifted a machine and you have an option of which one to tell them, I would watch some reviews and see what's really important to you. Because they all do the same thing. They're all just slightly different, right? Valerie said, I put tulle over the block and did a diagonal stitch to secure. Ah, good job, Valerie. That's smart. Yeah, then you don't have to sew down all your little pieces. Sheila said, would it work to make candy a color and do swirls with thread or paint? Yes. Yes, I like that line of thinking. Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, Mary Jo said, Sheila, you have all these great ideas. She does. I want to see you make the candy blocks, Sheila. All right. So, again, I'm going to switch feet because I'm going to do a quick free motion stitch for all of my pieces, right? Yeah, my biggest advice when it comes to a cutting machine, because no matter what machine you're going with, each one of them is an investment, right? I don't know any of them that are super cheap. So I've always just recommended, when you have some time, sit down on YouTube and just pull up a good amount of reviews on each one of the machines and see which color thread do I want to use. See which one See which one you like. Also, what color thread do I want to use in the bobbin? I'm going to switch over. Oh, y'all look. I played bobbin chicken. There's only just a tiny, tiny bit left. Today's a good day. I'm going to switch over to some gray bottom line in the bobbin for this anyway. You might want to check if you're on Facebook Marketplace. There might be someone locally who has perhaps gotten a new machine for Christmas and they're looking to sell their used one. It still works fantastically. It's just they don't need two. That's a great option for getting a machine. All right, bottom line, free motion foot. Let me get this machine threaded and then we're going to switch over and do some stitching. Next week we are doing some patchwork, no applique. Ta-da. I always like to give like a totally unbiased opinion about stuff. So that's a hard question for me to answer because I am very, very partial to my machine. and I love it. But that does not mean that the Scan and Cut is the only great machine out there either. And the Scan and Cut that I have is discontinued. I have the CM350. I love it. They have newer models out. Okay, let's switch over here before the internet totally gives up for today. You see I have my free motion foot on. Bottom line in the bobbin. I have some beige color. What thread is this? YLI thread. This is a polyester thread on the top too, y'all. And it's a universal thread, so they say it's great for piecing and applique and all, quilting. I use this same thread on my knolting. I love it. It's very universal. And that's what I'm going to use to stitch down my applique pieces for these two blocks. I'm not going to put my feed dogs down. I'm just going to lower my stitch length to a 0 and do a straight stitch. We're going to pull up that little bobbin thread right there. And I will say this as we get started, there's lots of little negative space around this candy to do some really fun quilting stuff. I'm going to keep it simple and just stitch down my applique and at the same time quilt this block. But there's lots of quilting space, even with this being a smaller block. I do think this glove is still helpful though, even though that's smaller. Hold on one second, y'all. There we go. That quick, the outside portion is stitched down, right? And now I'm just going to jump right over here. Now I do think a contrasting thread would have looked really cute. And the quilting for that block is done. So I don't know if you can see that little stitching. There we go. And on the back, we just have the outline of all the pieces. We're going to bring this one in. There's our bobbin thread. Notice whenever I stop to do anything, you want to make sure the needle is in the down position. So there's the outside done, and we're going to jump into these pieces. Because I'm stitching on a red fabric, see that? And I'm kind of far away. Traveling from piece to piece to piece, I'm doing some traveling, right? Stitching these pieces down. On the green one, I traveled within the little green pieces, and that stitch was hidden. But because I'm stitching with a white thread on red pieces, I don't really want to travel because I think you can see it if I mess up. So when I travel, I'm going to go into that light fabric and travel there, if that makes sense. So I stitched the piece. Now I'm in the background of the wrapper, and I'm going to move down to the next piece. Now I'll jump back into the red. Alright, and it might make more sense if I show it to you this way, although the lighting is horrible here. Alright, so that is the stitching for those two blocks. Let's see, Marion said, I'm looking for a mechanical machine that has a large throat space so I can do my quilting. Do you have any recommendations? Wow, machines are so expensive. And they're so personal too, right? Because you might not be interested in all the decorative stitches, but you might just want the throat space. All the machines are so different. Again, I'm going to ask for recommendations. And I can only really speak for the machine that I'm using, which has an 8-inch throat space. I don't want to recommend machines that I have not used before. Do you know what I'm saying? I think if you had access to a store that carries different machines and they let you actually sit down and mess with them and sew, you know, test them out. Oh, that's what I would do. Because even the expensive machines, like we have a Tidewater sewing vac down the way a little bit, and they have some machines in there that you can actually sit down and mess with, right? And they have one in there that's like a sedan of sewing machines, and it was lovely. It just purred. And I'm thinking that throw space was like 10 inches. I forget what it was now, the machine. It was gorgeous, and it sewed like butter. The machine right next to it, which was more expensive, I sat down at that, and it just felt clunky. And I'm like, holy cow, I would have thought the more expensive machine I would have liked better, but I didn't. So I have a hard time recommending machines. And my biggest recommendation when it comes to a machine is if you have a chance to use it first, do it. What is my long arm? My long arm is a Quilting. I have a Quilting Pro Series 24. Now I'm going to tell you that machine is a workhorse. Boy, she can do some quilting through some layers. And I like recycled blue jeans in my quilt. That don't matter. I like every once in a while using a vintage flat sheet for the back of my quilt. That don't matter. She quilts through everything. Yeah, I have a Quilting Pro Series 24. And I love it. All right, so how are we doing on time? 1 hour and 45 minutes, y'all. I think y'all get the gist of actually attaching the sashing, right? So what we are going to do is sew these blocks together as a unit, but I'm not going to put the sashing on them. I'll do that sometime before next Friday. So to do that, I need my regular pressing foot. Let me focus for a second, Lisa. Focus, focus. I'm going to take the free motion foot off. I had to remember where we were for a second. Let me put my regular foot back on. That means I need to take the bottom line out of the bobbin. I'm glad I have another bobbin close by because I don't think there's enough gray thread that's going to get us through. Let's see what we got here. What is this? That'll work. You just got a glimpse of my normal day. I usually talk to myself just like that throughout the day. All right, so let's bring in, I have stuff everywhere. Let's bring in these pieces. Fold them up over there. And let's bring in this. Because I'm going to show you how we're going to put these pieces together, right? We just made the blocks that go in that section there. So we have our quilted blue block. I don't know that it much matters if you put the green or the red on top, but one block needs to go on top and one block needs to go on the bottom. I'm going to put mine in different directions. I think that's super cute. And before we can attach these to the right side of this one, we need to sew that seam, right? Now, I don't know that I'm in love with the way we've been doing it, but I'm going to keep doing it for this quilt. I want the seam on the front, so I'm going to pull these two together so that the backs are facing each other. There should be less bulk because we did not bring that batting all the way to the edge. And we're going to sew that seam with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Quarter inch seam allowance. my handy dandy leader. I have these little leaders all over the place, y'all. Okay. So there's that. You're not done for today yet. You got to warm back up. We're going to go ahead and press this seam, which is way less bulky since we don't have that batting in there. That's lovely. And my blocks are laying down flat. Okay, so maybe this method isn't so bad. All right, once you piece those two blocks together, and I want my green one on top, they should be the same size, 8.5 inches tall, to join to the right side of this block. I guess you could put it here too if you wanted to. Change it up a little bit. I'm going to keep mine true to the design, and we're going to do it like that. I'm going to put my smaller blocks on top, though, as we sew this seam, so I can keep an eye on what they're doing. Oh, no. Back up. Back up. Hold on a second. Let me think. Can we sew these yet? Hold on a second, y'all. No, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you what we could do. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because we have the piece of sashing that comes in here, right? That's okay. I'm going to treat it like my corn quilt that I did. That's what we will do. All right. So we have that seam. And you know what? I think I'm going to press that seam. I think we're going to lose the point of the little flying geese units too. Because of the sashing. I didn't even think about that. All right, so there's those three sections. These are going to go on the right side of the block we did last week. The Joy to the World. See that? 8.5 inches from top to bottom. Let's go ahead and sew that seam. And then I'm going to show you how to do the sashing if you completely forgot about it up until this point. And I reckon you could do the whole quilt and then do your sashing. You could do that. I'm going to line these up nice and straight. Yeah, for normal piecing, we have our 1/4 inch seam allowance. But because of that sashing we're adding, we're going to cut a portion of that off. which might be okay because it'll round this out a little bit more like a snowball. So there you go. Okie dokie. I think that's the last time we're flipping back and forth today. Let me bring all this in as much as can fit into the camera. There we go. Now these seams, this seam just really wants to go towards that block, so I'm not going to fight it, y'all. I'm just going to press that seam to one side, right over top. See that? Now let me show you how I'm going to treat the sashing since I pieced all these together before adding the sashing. There. Let me bring in all these pieces. All right, I have a little piece that's going to go here. We can go ahead and let me grab my scissors. Instead of bringing it all the way up to the seam, I'm just going to line it up so that it just does touch. It's going to be covered up. I'm going to cut it a little bit longer, just for now. And we're going to glue baste. Or I'm going to glue baste my sashing in place. You might not want to do that. There we go. Let's try that. Ooh, there's lots of questions, y'all. Hold on a second. Let me get this sashing glue basted and I'll go back and try and get y'all's questions. All right. So that's in place, right? And then we can cover this piece just like that. And see how much of the tip of the of the flying geese unit we're going to cover. It's going to kind of round that out more like a snowball. And it kind of stings less if I say, I meant to do it like that. We meant to do it like that. So the main thing is we're going to cover the raw edge of that sashing, right? I really don't want to cover up any parts of my candy. But we can bring it over as far into that block as we can. Just trying to do it so it's straight without... There we go. Anitra, you closed on, you're back from your closing already? Well, I am so dang excited for y'all. I want to come to your cabin. See how I did that? Now, should I stitch it down? We're going on 2 hours. And then cover that one. I guess we kind of want it to look the same as that side, right? So let's go in there a little bit more. There we go. We meant to. do that with our points. There we go. So at this point, what I would do is I would come in. Ooh, I want to straighten that one up. But I'm not going to do it here. I'll wait until sometime this week. Start stitching down. You could even stitch down that sashing before adding this one on top, right? Stitch down those two sides of that sashing. And then you could stitch down both sides of that sashing and this one. And then trim off those little ends, right? I want to straighten that up, but I don't want to hold y'all up anymore today. That needs to be straightened up. But once those sashing pieces are in place, then you can join this whole section right to the bottom of this section, which all does not fit in the screen. But it's going to look fabulous. And this section should be the same width as the top section. This is going to look fantastic. I'm really sad that this is all you get to see in one glimpse, but there we go. It's going to look so great. So yeah, I still need to stitch my sashing down. I really want to straighten this one up because looking on the camera, I can see it's crooked. See that? But I'm also kind of done right this second. And I need some food. All right, let me go back and see what questions I missed before we go. I really hope that you're sharing your 3 blocks or whatever progress you're making on yours. All right, let me scoot up some. All right, what is your long arm? I saw that question. Da-da-da-da. Lisa, can you quilt a twin size quilt on the Juki you're using? Right, I have the HXL F600. A twin size quilt, yes. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be really easy. I don't know the quilting. Okay, here's the thing. And I know lots and lots of y'all love to finish your own quilts. And you figure out ways to fit the whole quilt through whatever machine you're using. Here's my thing. I don't like basting a quilt. I hate basting quilts now. I used to baste king size quilts, and it used to take me all day. Right, and so when I first started quilting again, not long ago, again, shortly before starting YouTube, I have the Singer Patchwork, which has a small throw space. That's like 4 inches. No twin size quilt in that for me. So I bumped up to a sit-down mid-arm quilting machine. I forget what that was, but it had 18 inches of throat space and it was fantastic for quilting. The only downside to it was you still had to baste your quilts, and I was doing so many quilts at the time, t-shirt quilts, that part was exhausting me. So I moved from the sit-down mid-arm, 18 inches. It was the Artistic Quilter is what I had, which was an awesome quilting machine. Artistic Quilter. That's when I moved to the long arm and the frame because the basting part was killing me. My back was hurting all the time. It was so time consuming, and making t-shirt quilts on commission was how I was making my living at that time. That was the only income source for me. So I had to do something to speed up that process. If you're looking for a sit-down quilting only machine, I mean, this one only just did a straight stitch. Look at the Artistic Quilter. It is on a table that has a fold down back, so it's not going to take up lots of space. It's situated just like a regular sewing machine, so you're used to the way it's orientated on the table. Look at Artistic Quilter. I always forget to recommend that machine, but it was an awesome quilting machine, 18 inches of throat space. Tracy said, shouldn't you put the sashing between first? I probably should have, Tracy. I moved right along. I moved right along and didn't see. Had I seen your comment, I would have remembered to do that first. Wanda said, I really love the snowflake. I would make a quilt of just that. Yes, isn't that pretty? All shades of blue you could do. Wouldn't that be so pretty? Probably a silly question, but what temperature should we wash the quilt when we use Elmer's glue for basting? I wash all my quilts in cold water. That's just me. That's what I do. I don't pre-wash any of my fabrics, and so I find a cold water wash works great for reducing the chance of a bleed in the wash, and the cold water, that washes out the glue stick too. Wanda said, is there such thing as a quilted curtain? I think for my sewing room, it would be cute. It would need a batting, or can I just use interfacing? I don't know. A patchwork curtain would be adorable. I think if you did it with a batting, it would be really heavy. Unless you used like a polyester batting, like the really light ones that you can see through pretty much. I don't know. Oh, then Robin said, I saw a lady on YouTube who made a crumb curtain, but I don't know what she used in the middle. I think that would be adorable. Yeah, Tracy said I wash everything in cold water. Me too. Even my clothes. They shrink less. Which here lately is lovely. The less shrinking, the better. Sheila, you got your machine back. Good. Good. Now, y'all, we did a lot of sewing today, and we've actually been hanging out. If you're here till the very end, thanks for hanging out with us. If you skipped around on the replay and you're still here, thanks for hanging out with us. I don't blame you for skipping around. That was a lot of stitching. All right, everybody. Let me think. Next Friday is Black Friday. Thanksgiving is Thursday. I know many of you might be out shopping next Friday. Many of you might be in a food coma, like me. Well, that depends on which day we're going to eat. I say let's hang out next Friday. Those of you who don't have company or don't have anything else to do, let's hang out next Friday. We'll be doing the next block, which is block 11 in this quilt. And it's patchwork, so you will not see any SVGs in the Etsy store, but I'll be posting the block Wednesday for you to get all your pieces together. And let's hang out next Friday. I think that'll be good too, because if you're like me, my kids have 2 places to go. Sometimes they have more than that on Thanksgiving. And you might celebrate Thanksgiving on a different day just to accommodate all the craziness of blended families like mine, right? I'm not exactly sure which day we're eating a Thanksgiving meal, But it'll either be a Thursday or Saturday. Yeah. So Friday, let's hang out. For those of you who can make it Friday, I would be glad to see you. And for those of you who have plans, the replay will be up. Yes, for those in Canada, happy Thanksgiving last month. I'm going to tell you the Thanksgiving type of food is my favorite food of all year. It's my favorite. Green bean casserole. I know I'm weird. That's my all-time favorite. I know I'm one of the very few. But I could make a green bean casserole and that's all I eat. I could eat the whole thing by myself. Green bean casserole. What else? Some stuffing. Some dressing. I could give or take the turkey. I'd rather have ham, I think. So, if I don't see you next week, I'll see you on the replay. And then, for certain, maybe you'll be back the following week. I am still working on fabric requirements for the mystery quilt coming up in January. But I'm working on it as fast as I can go so that you have plenty of time to source some fabrics or start pulling from your stash to get some stuff together, right? I am working on it as fast as I can go. Ooh, candied sweet potatoes. I am so hungry right now. I am so hungry. Karen said, my family won't let me skip green bean casserole. I know. Mine either. Internet at the cabin, Anitra, is one of your top priorities. Marion, yeah, look at the Artistic Quilter and let me know what you think. You know, if you have a good piecing machine, a machine that you really like for piecing, but you really want that good extra throat space, and you just want a moderately priced quilting machine, right? It does a good job at quilting. It's free motion, though. I didn't think about that. It's a free motion. But you can do it. Look into it, and I think there's some videos on YouTube, so watch some reviews. I know, I'm going to go eat some lunch, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me so long today. I really should have thought out my planning for the weeks and the blocks for this quilt. But I didn't. It's all good. I've enjoyed spending some time with you. Have a safe week. Have fun creating, everybody. And please share your pictures over on Creative Crew. We all want to see them. Bye, everybody.